So our question, SPX full complex, SPXP, or the zero DTE? Well, they're all different, right? Time frame matters. You have to think like a trader in the context. This is the way I think of it. Are all trades zero DTE? Of course not. Large volume in the in the SPX, but not all trades are zero day volume. I would definitely check the zero DTE, COTMP, and COTMC levels, and you can do that with the $S level at any one given time. But I also think just knowing how people are positioned just across the complex. So if you run the SPXP, right, remember, we're looking at deltas, and deltas tend to stabilize in time the further away they are from right now. Now, why is that important to the conversation? They're not moving around a lot, right? So when you look at a delta, you need a pretty significant, because there's time value there, you need a pretty significant move in the underlying and to get a large change in the overall delta value that could be 45 days out or 60 days out. So there's definitely value in looking at the entire option complex, but I like to pull it in also, and I like to look closer. So the question is, which is more reliable? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're a zero DTE trader, then I would shorten your time frame to the zero DTE, and that's going to give you a view of what matters most to the zero DTE crowds. That's how they're positioned. It's a structural measurement of how they're positioned on the day. And you can even include, 5 days out, go 0.5 or whatever the case, or 0.4 on SPX. And the COTMC and COTMP levels will just use that horizon to do the calculations. But remember, if there's news events in there and things like that, you probably want to do it with and without that. Right? So if Wednesday is going to be, a big FOMC release, I would do Monday, Tuesday. I would look at Wednesday in isolation. Like tomorrow would be 0.0, Tuesday would be 1, 2, Wednesday would be 2, and so you could do like the $S, SPX. It doesn't matter if you do SPXP or just SPX, because you're looking at single day expiries, and there are no A's in there. There is no AM settled thing. So SPX will return the same information as SPXP. And you can kind of look at each day over day, and gauge, how is it moving as a function of the days that we're laying out in front of you. I tend not to get that complicated with it. The web tool is the ones that are displayed in the web tool use the entire complex. To me, that's all that matters. That's the one I'm using when I look at the all expiries view, and that's the one that I think I pay the most attention to. But CheckNav and Tom and others here who have used the COTMP and COTMC levels intraday, Terry, I don't know if Terry's is on tonight, but Terry, CheckNav, etc. I think they all have their own forms of how they measure COTMC and COTMP and how they trade off of it. So I've used the last script and the first script of the day. So this is important, I think. Use the first script, and the reason is that first script of the day, COTMC and COTMP, although they will be driven by spot price because moneyness matters, right? The values in the morning are the structure in the morning, and there's no error. Well, to the extent that you can use OI for this stuff. So as you go through the day, there's going to be a lot of volume in the day, and that's going to start moving some things around, but we don't adjust COTMC and COTMP with the volume data. So the end of day script, although the price will have moved and the results are valid, of course they're valid. I mean, you're doing it on a structure. You're just evaluating COTMP and COTMC on at a different spot price, perhaps a different volatility, different time to expiry, that type of stuff. Those will change the delta values, but the end of the day will always be further away from the OI at that moment in time, because we only get OI. Everyone only gets OI in the morning, and that's it. There are no other OI updates available in the retail or the at our level of service, which is pretty significant. So I would urge use the morning scripts and maybe the noon scripts. So 12:45 New York time is midpoint for the day. That's at 195 minutes into the session. I would use that one, and you're going to be in pretty good shape. I wouldn't necessarily use the end of day, except perhaps just to see how spot price and a decrease in time to expiry may have affected the calculation of those movements.
But there will be a variance.
There is a difference between 0DT and full complex, and it kind of makes sense, especially if you think about it. If you look at the 21-day, when the markets are open in a given month, not every day is uniform in their distribution of where people are targeting. Obviously, Fridays have much higher open interest, and then Wednesdays fall second. And actually, Wednesdays are starting to shift gears, where Mondays and Fridays are the highest volume or the highest OI, with Wednesday in the middle, and then Tuesday's a little bit stronger than Thursdays. Thursday, generally, it's like crickets, right? And so you get a very different profile depending on when you run this, when you look at this, and not when you run it, but when you start thinking through, do I use full complex, or do I use some portion of it, or do I just isolate on a 0DTE? A 0DTE with a high open interest is going to give you far more data, the richness of the data of the complex, because you've got 700,000 contracts like we had on Friday of the SPX, right? So that's going to give you your distribution curve is going to be very well defined. There's not going to be any what I would consider discontinuities or whatever. But when you only have 150,000 contracts, which we often see in the next day, right? In the 1DT on many of these things, there's not enough there really in isolation to do things. So now you combine the 0DT and the 1DT, and that shifts the moneyness a little bit, right? That shift, or where these calculations are. So there is no right answer. What you're doing is you're answering the question, where do I have the higher probability of seeing values get monetized? And you can look out. I mean, is there a news event on Wednesday? So people are going to position Monday, Tuesday, and half of Wednesday, possibly, right? So there's probably some artful things to do here that the data that we have, here, and what's even available in the spreadsheet doesn't consider. I mean, these are all nuances, and I don't want to say people have to do this to be successful. You don't, and clearly you don't. But there's nothing here can be just like black, white, do this, and you're going to get success 100% of the time. I think the COTMP level gets tested far more in normal markets, what I would call lower volatility markets. But what do we know about what's been happening in the last, week to 2 weeks? We've actually had higher volatility across the board in the SPX, and that can explain some of this, right? Where people's positioning, what you don't get here is you don't get what's the distribution look like. So what's the positioning look like? This just tells you where the median is, where that level is. It doesn't tell you how fat the distribution is or where the tails are. And I think that's probably some information that could be useful in the future, but is not present here.